Hello and welcome to My Way or the AI Way. I'm Scott Davison. I'm on a mission to master AI, and I'm using this podcast to share some of my wins and fails along that journey. I had a win this week, managed to save $472 on my car insurance renewal using AI. And I shared this story on LinkedIn, just a post on LinkedIn, and it's gone quite viral. It's had over 200 comments. And it seems people were quite interested and surprised at the way I'd been able to use AI to help me save money on my car insurance. I assumed everyone was doing this sort of thing, but clearly not. So I want to share that story with you today, talk you through the process I use, because AI can be a really good tool for helping you save money on small contracts like your annual car insurance. But I also want to give you some examples of how AI can help you negotiate really well on much bigger contracts, maybe a big strategic partnership for your business. That's what we're going to cover today. Let's get started. So let's start with my car insurance example, and I'll show you how that came about. I got one of these emails that you've probably seen from your insurance provider saying, oh, your renewal's due up for renewal. Go here to renew. And of course, I'd left it to the last minute, and this was the final reminder. And you know, this is a tactic that all insurance companies use. They call it a loyalty tax, but they often will bump the prices up and just hope that most people don't bother shopping around. And even this email I got from them, there's no mention of the price in it. They do attach the policy, which obviously has the price. And clearly, once I go through to update and renew, I will see the price. But the default is just, here's quick 3 easy steps to help you renew quickly. Gmail has this feature that picked up, they've obviously scanned the attachments and they've picked up that I've got a bill due for $1,744 for my insurance. And it was that amount that was just enough for me to go, hang on, that seems a bit expensive. And when I looked, it had gone up more than $200, I think, since last year's policy. And that was enough to sort of prompt me into action. And this is where I turn to ChatGPT to help me with the process. So let me talk you through that. Here's the chat I had. Now, for this type of task, in fact, for pretty much all tasks these days, I'm using ChatGPT 03, it's called. It's the reasoning model, and you can select it up in the settings there on the left. And as I say, that's pretty much my default for most queries these days, apart from the voice activated ones. And the reason I like it, it's a reasoning model, so it's a bit slower. And I've sort of explained how the default ChatGPT 4.0 is kind of like an intern that's really keen to please and will give you really quick answers, but not always so well thought through. 03 is like a more mature staff member who perhaps is a bit slower, takes a bit more time, comes back with some thoughtful questions, and then goes off and does some thorough reasoning before coming back with the answer. So for this type of task, 03 is perfect. If you haven't tried it yet, I recommend that. And I started by giving it a prompt, which is here. I'll read it out to you if you're listening. So I've said, this is going to be a deep research request. Are you able to help? My car insurance is due for renewal. I've attached the quote, and the price has increased by about $200 since last year. So I've given it the context of what I'm wanting to do, and I've uploaded the current quote so it can see what I'm currently on. And then I've said, first step, please start by reading the attached quote and summarizing what's included and what's not included so that we can use that for doing comparisons. And I've said, after we do that summary, I'll then ask you to do some more questions to create a short list of potential companies. But to start with, please give me the summary. And then the way I finish all prompts these days, and I really recommend this, is I always say, does this request make sense? Do you have any other suggestions on how we approach it? And I've hit submit with that attached. And it's come back with a really good summary of what's in that document. Now, obviously, I could and probably should go through and read the document myself, but this is a really quick way to get a good summary of the key facts. And for most of us who are too lazy or too busy to read all the terms and conditions, I recommend doing this with pretty much all contracts. Give it to ChatGPT, get it to give you a summary, and if there's any clauses it flags, you can then go in and read them in more detail. And this summary it's given me here is really good. It's sort of summarized what's in the current policy. And immediately I picked up, for instance, here, it's made a point that of my address being Preston and that it's parked at Mulgrave at work. Now, that was the case 12 months ago. That's no longer the case. I've now changed address and I'm not going to the office. I'm working from home. So that sparked that idea that that's perhaps an area where I'll be able to make some changes to bring the price down. And it's given a really good summary. And then it's said, before we go price hunting, here's a few clarifying questions. So it's coming back, asking me for thoughtful questions. What are the must-haves versus the nice-haves? What's my driving profile? So how many kilometers do I expect to do this year compared to last year? That was a really good key point. Are there any additional drivers? And then what are the discount levers? So do I have other insurance with a particular provider? Because that can sometimes be used as a good negotiation tool. And finally, what are the service factors? So am I actually happy with Amy? Which I am. I quite like their service. Anytime I've had to use them, I've found them pretty good. So under normal circumstances, I wouldn't really be looking to change, but I just want to make sure I'm getting a good price. And then these are the suggested next steps. So confirm the above. I'll then produce a short list of potential insurers. I'll go off and gather quotes, is what it's saying, and we can compare that side by side. And then you can use that information to go and first try and negotiate a better price with Amy, was its recommended approach, which I liked. So that's what we did. It went away. It's come back with a high-level summary of 7 potential insurers. Some of these are well-known names that I was aware of. Some of them were more left field, some of the cheaper providers, but it's done a really good job of highlighting, why they fit the brief for my particular circumstances, but also what are some of the watch outs? What are some of the things you need to be careful of with some of these policies? It might be a really low price, but there's usually a reason for that. Maybe they've got a low kilometre limit, for instance. And it's then asked for some more information so that it can go off and actually fill out some of these forms. And that surprised me. I didn't think it was actually going to be doing that for me. And I'm still not sure it's actually gone and completed those forms, but that's definitely something once we have agents, which we already do. But if you were to use an agent and give it all your details, it could actually go off to these sites, fill out all the application forms and give you a written quote that you can either sign or take to your current provider to negotiate. I didn't go as far as that, but I gave it enough information that it was able to go off, get really accurate quotes of what each of these providers would be providing. And it came back with a summary of that with sort of indicative annual quotes ranging from 1,400, 1,500. The cheapest one was around 1,200 with budget direct. So I sort of knew that the right range was going to be somewhere between 1,200 to 1,500, 1,200 at the very low end and 1,500 sort of at the high end. It's provided a lot of context there on what's included, what's not included, and what to look out for. Now, for me, that was enough information to give me the confidence to get on the phone to Amy and have a discussion where I know what the market rates are. And I've also had a look at my current policy, and I've got a few ideas of what I could be negotiating on or what I could be tweaking to bring the price down, thanks to the information from ChatGPT. So it's even gone as far, you can see here, as giving me a quick script. So it's actually written a script that I can use on the phone with Amy to negotiate a better price. With that in mind, I was all set and ready to go, picked up the phone and called Amy. Okay, I'll stop sharing there for a minute. So the end result is, apart from, the usual wait time of waiting online to talk to an insurance broker or insurance company, I was able to speak to them, explain basically the script that ChatGPT had given me, which is, I've been looking around, the price seems high, I've looked at what's in the market, I want to talk to you about a better price, what can we do? And then I went through some of those points, like where it's parked, the number of kilometres I'm doing a year, and some of the other things that have changed. And these are things that I don't believe that person on the phone would have offered to me if I hadn't have done the pre-research to ask for it. Based on that, I was ready to accept anything around 1,400, to be honest, compared to the 1,700 plus quote that I'd received. I would have been satisfied with that. They came back on the phone after those changes and that negotiation with 12,723. So that's a saving of $472 for a process that took me less than half an hour. So that's half an hour really well spent. The process sped up by AI, and I was able to save $473 on my car insurance. Of course, I went ahead with that policy and didn't have to go off through the hassle of trying to change providers. Really good result. And as I say, I shared that on LinkedIn, and people really liked that was just a practical, everyday way you can be using AI to save money. Now, some of the comments on LinkedIn, a lot of people asked why I didn't just use a comparison site, for instance. And Well, I hate those sites, to be frank. You have to enter lots of personal information. You have to give them your email address, and then you then spend months having to unsubscribe from all the emails they push you onto. And you're never really sure if they're giving you the best offer or the one that they've got the sponsorship deal with. So that particular model for me doesn't work. I think AI is really going to disrupt that model. They'll have to rethink how they do that service, because as you can see, it's now very easy for everyday consumers to go off and get pretty detailed comparisons based on their personal circumstances. So for me, this was a much better experience than comparison websites. The other comment that quite a few people raised was just the question of privacy concern. And that's a valid point. I think if you are uploading policy documents, personal information to ChatGPT or any AI tool, you need to be conscious of that. I'll show you how you can address that in ChatGPT here. If you go to your settings under your profile here, and you click on settings, and you'll see under here there's an option for data controls, and there's this tick box here which says improve the model for everyone. And by turning that on or off, what it's saying there is it allows your content to be used to train our models, which makes ChatGPT better for everyone. We take steps to protect your privacy, and they've got a link to their privacy details there. Now, in theory, by unselecting that box, which I've done, so that's turned off, they shouldn't be using this information to train the model, and therefore it should be relatively safe. But to what degree you trust that is obviously your call. And obviously, if you're working with company information or client information, you don't want to be using just a generic service like ChatGPT to access that information. You want to have a custom-built agent. But that's a valid point to think of if you are doing this sort of review, is security. But with that in mind, it's a really useful way to use AI to save some money on your annual insurance bills. So if you multiply that over your health insurance and various other policies, there's no longer a reason to just not put in the effort to review those policies, because it's now much easier. That took less than half an hour using AI. But that's a low-level example of how AI can help with negotiations. What if you're doing a more complex contract negotiation, like, say, for instance, a big strategic partnership or some sort of big business deal? There's a lot of moving parts there, and it's a far more complex process. But again, AI can be used to really improve that process and help you get a better result. So let me talk you through some ways you can be doing that. Contract negotiation is an art, or perhaps a science, depending how you look at it. And there's actually lots of literature. There's lots of books that have been written, lots of papers that have been written about how to do an effective contract negotiation. And this information is all publicly available, which means it's accessible to AI such as ChatGPT. So if you know what you're looking for or which model you want to apply, you can use ChatGPT to help you apply that to your situation. I'll give you 3 examples here of how this works. So these were some prompts that were shared on LinkedIn by someone I follow called Ruben Hassad. I'll put a link to his original post in the show notes so you can see them for yourself. But he's said here that he never negotiates without ChatGPT, and here are my top 3 prompts. So these are examples that I'm going to talk you through of how you can use ChatGPT to help you with a complex contract negotiation. Okay, let's zoom in here so you can read this. So here's his top 3 prompts, and these are good examples of applying a well-known negotiation model to your negotiation. And it's very simple to do using any of the models, in my case, ChatGPT. So the first prompt, he's called it the Harvard Principled Negotiation. And he starts by giving it a role. So act like an expert in principled negotiation, employing the framework from Fisher and Erie's Getting to Yes. So that's a famous book on negotiation, Getting to Yes. And he's saying, please apply those concepts to this negotiation. Here is the context of my negotiation, and you then paste in the details of your negotiation, whatever information you have, the more the better. Begin by separating people from the problem and focusing on interests rather than positions. Generate a variety of options before deciding on an agreement, encouraging creativity and open-mindedness. Insist that all agreement is based on objective criteria, seeking fair standards independent of personal will. Use empathetic communication to build a rapport, understanding the other side's viewpoint and expressing your own clearly, and aim for a win-win outcome where both parties feel satisfied with the agreement. continually navigate towards mutual respect and understanding, avoiding the pitfall of viewing negotiation as a battle to win. And then finally, take a deep breath and work on this problem step by step. So he's given it the model, he's given it the steps, and you can see that he's instructing the AI to help come up with a win-win model, which is really important for these big business negotiations. You're not trying to rip the other person off. You're trying to create a long-term partnership that's beneficial for both companies. So you can use AI to help you see things from the other person's or the other company's point of view and look for a win-win. I really like that example. The second one here, prompt 2, is the 7 elements frameworks. In this case, act like a Harvard-trained negotiating, applying the 7 elements framework. Again, here's the context for my negotiation. You paste it in there or attach any documents that are relevant. And the steps for this one are: start by identifying and articulating interests, the needs, desires, fears, concerns that underlie whatever the topic is. Explore options, so brainstorm multiple choices before deciding what to do. Establish criteria, determine fair standards and procedures for making decisions. Develop legitimate and fair standards for the negotiation, seeking to base the process on principled decisions. Communicate effectively, understanding that relationships is more important as the substance of the negotiation. Commit to the process, ensuring that both parties are clear about the specifics of the agreement, and handle communication strategically, recognizing the importance of both what is said and what is not said. Again, take a deep breath, work on this problem step by step. So he's basically included the key steps of the 7 elements framework, the 7 steps. And obviously, if you don't know what they are, you can first ask AI, open a different chat window, ask it to tell you what those 7 steps are, and then paste that into your prompt. But it's guiding it on the principles that you want to apply to this particular scenario. And the third one is prompt 3, the Toulmin Model. Act like a critical thinker, applying the Toulmin Model of argument. Here is the context, paste it in, and these are the steps of the Toulmin one. Start with a claim, state your position or what you're asking for, present your grounds, offer the evidence that supports your claim, elucidate your warrant, explain how the grounds logically support your claim, anticipate rebuttals, so consider counter arguments and objections to your position. That's a really good way to use AI. Use backing, so provide additional support to bolster your warrant, and qualify your claim. Specify the limits of your argument and under what conditions your claim holds true. And finally, create a closing argument that reinforces your position, combining rationality with persuasive communication. Take a deep breath and work on this problem step by step. Okay, so those are 3 examples of applying well-known models to your context. And you can see how that enables you to act like a professional negotiator. And you're more likely to get a much better result by applying those principles and by using AI. So I've shown you how AI can help with the research step of this, going off and doing the research for you. It can also act like a paralegal and review contracts and documents for you to highlight any key terms that you need to be aware of. And then finally, you can use AI as a expert negotiate advisor to advise you on how you want to be negotiating with the other partner. Really effective, practical use of AI. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please share this episode with other people who you think could get value from it. And as always, like, subscribe, do all that sort of stuff, and comment wherever you're watching this. It all helps with getting more visibility for the podcast, so I appreciate that. Until next week, thank you for joining me on this mission to learn more about AI. I'm Scott Davison, and this is My Way or the AI Way.